The cleaning cart made a soft sound as Park pushed it down the long metal corridor. The wheels needed oil. She had asked for maintenance 3 times now, but nobody cared about a janitor's request. Nobody cared about janitors at all. 7 was a massive space station floating in the darkness between stars. Thousands of beings lived and worked here. Traders from 100 worlds came to buy and sell. Diplomats made deals in fancy meeting rooms. Soldiers walked the halls with weapons on their hips. And somewhere in the lowest levels, far from the important people, mopped floors and cleaned toilets. She was a small woman, not young anymore. Gray hair mixed with black, always tied back in a simple knot. Her hands were rough from years of work. When she walked, there was a small limp in her left leg. Old injury. She never talked about it. Had worked on this station for 15 years. In all that time, she had never raised her voice, never complained, never caused any trouble. She was invisible, and that was exactly how she wanted it. The corridor she cleaned was in Section D, where the Dominion kept their offices. There were tall beings covered in green and brown scales like lizards. They stood on 2 legs and had 4 arms. Their eyes were yellow with black slits. They were proud. They were powerful, and they hated humans. Did not hate anyone. She just wanted to do her job and go back to her small room. But the universe rarely gives people what they want. She heard them before she saw them, heavy footsteps, laughing voices. Her stomach tightened, but her face stayed calm. She continued mopping, head down, hoping they would walk past. They did not walk past. Sub-Commander was the tallest of the group. His scales were darker than the others, almost black at the edges. 3 younger officers followed him like shadows. They wore their military uniforms with pride. Medals shined on their chests. They had probably never seen real battle. Stopped right in front of Scart. His yellow eyes looked down at her like she was dirt on his boot. "Human," he said. The word sounded like an insult. "You are blocking our path." The corridor was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side, and her cart took up almost no space. But she did not point this out. She simply stepped back and bowed her head. "I apologize, Sub-Commander. Please go ahead." Did not move. A slow smile spread across his face. His teeth were sharp. "Your kind does not belong in territory. Every time I see you, I smell your human stink." The young officers laughed. Said nothing. She had heard worse, much worse. Reached out with one of his 4 hands and pushed her cleaning cart. It fell over with a loud crash. Mops and brushes and bottles of cleaning liquid scattered across the floor. Water spread in a wide puddle. "Clean that up," said, "and do it properly this time. I want to see this floor shine." He walked over the puddle, his officers following. Their boots left wet prints on the floor, had just finished cleaning. When they were gone, let out a slow breath. Her hands were shaking slightly. She forced them to stop. Then she picked up her cart, gathered her supplies, and started cleaning again. This happened 3 or 4 times every week. On the other side of the corridor, a young human man watched from the shadows. His name was Han, and he wore the uniform of station security. He was 26 years old, fresh from training, still believing in things like justice and fairness. He had seen pushovers cart. He had seen the older woman bow and say nothing. He had watched her clean up the mess without a single word of protest. His hand had moved to his communication device. He could report this. Harassment, discrimination. There were rules against this kind of behavior. But then he thought about their political power, their connections. His career had just started. Did he really want to make enemies on his first month? He lowered his hand. He walked away. That night, guilt kept him awake. The next day, he saw in the cafeteria. She sat alone in a corner, eating simple food from a metal tray. No one sat near her. No one talked to her. Bought his own food and, after a moment of hesitation, walked to her table. "May I sit here?" he asked. Looked up. Her eyes were dark brown, calm and deep. For a moment felt like she was looking through him. seeing everything he was and everything he was not. "If you want," she said. He sat down. For a while they ate in silence. "I saw what happened yesterday," finally said. "With Sub-Commander I wanted to. I should have." "You should have done nothing," said quietly. "Which is exactly what you did. Smart choice." "It was not right." "Many things are not right." She took a bite of her food. "This is a big station, young man. Many things happen that are not right. If you try to fix all of them, you will break yourself." "How can you just accept it?" asked. "The way they treat you." Put down her fork. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of someone who had seen too much. "I have survived worse than rude children," she said. Before could ask what she meant, she picked up her tray and left. That night returned to her small room in the lower levels. It was barely bigger than a closet, a narrow bed, a small desk, a picture on the wall of a mountain covered in snow, Korea, home, a place she had not seen in decades. Under her bed was a metal case. It was locked with a code that only she knew. She had not opened it in 15 years. She sat on her bed and stared at the wall. Her hands, resting on her knees, were perfectly still now. The station's speakers crackled to life. An announcement echoed through every corridor. "Attention all personnel. A diplomatic delegation from Terran Union High Command will arrive in 3 days. All sections prepare for inspection. Security level raised to yellow. Repeat, security level yellow." His expression did not change, but something shifted behind her eyes, something old and cold. In the section, Sub-Commander heard the same announcement. He laughed to his officers. "Terran High Command," he said with contempt. "They will send some soft diplomat in a fancy uniform. Humans are all the same, weak, pathetic, good only for cleaning floors." His officers laughed with him. 3 days later, they would learn how wrong they were. But for now just lay down on her narrow bed and closed her eyes. In her dreams she was somewhere else, somewhere dark, somewhere underground. And in her dreams she was not a janitor. She was something else entirely. The delegation arrived on a Tuesday. Admiral stepped off the shuttle with the confidence of a man who had commanded fleets and won wars. He was tall for a Korean man, with silver hair cut short and a face like carved stone. His uniform was covered in medals and ribbons that told the story of 30 years of service to the Terran Union. Behind him walked his staff, officers and aides and guards, all moving with military precision. The station's leaders rushed to greet them. Hands were shaken. Formal words were exchanged. Cameras recorded everything. In the lower levels, watched the arrival on a small screen in the maintenance break room. Her face showed nothing, but her fingers tightened around her cup of tea. "Big important people," said another janitor, an older man with tired eyes. "They will make a mess and we will clean it up, same as always." Nodded and returned to work. For the next 2 days the station was chaos. Every floor had to be perfect. Every window had to shine. Every officer had to look their best. The important people from Earth were watching, and 7 had to impress them. Worked longer hours than usual. Her leg hurt more than usual, but she did not complain. She never complained. On the second day, found her personnel file. He had been thinking about her words. "I have survived worse than rude children." What did that mean? Who was this woman who accepted abuse with such strange calm? As a security officer, he had access to basic personnel records. He pulled up her file on his tablet and found almost nothing. Name Park, age 48, position sanitation technician level 2, employment start 15 years ago, previous employment none listed, family none listed, military service none listed, education none listed. It was empty, too empty. Real people had histories. They had families and jobs and schools. This file looked like someone had deleted everything and left only a shell. Went to his friend. She worked in station intelligence, handling background checks and security clearances. They had trained together and she owed him a favor. "I need you to look into someone," he said, showing her the file. Looked at the screen. Her eyebrows went up. "The janitor? Why do you care about a janitor?" "Just curious." Typed a few commands, then she stopped. Her face changed. She said slowly, "Her file is locked." "What do you mean, locked?" "I mean I cannot access it. Level 5 security clearance required. Do you understand what that means? I have level 3. Station commander has level 4. Level 5 is military high command, admirals, generals. Why would a janitor have that kind of protection on her file?" Had no answer. "Drop it," said. "Some files are thin on purpose. Whoever this woman is or was, someone very powerful wants her past to stay hidden. That is not a game you want to play." Nodded, but he did not drop it. He could not. The mystery was too deep. The third day came. Admiral and his delegation toured the station. They inspected the docking bays. They reviewed the defense systems. They met with diplomats to discuss trade agreements. In the afternoon, the tour came to the lower levels. "We want to see everything," Admiral had said. "Not just the pretty parts. Show me how this station really works." The station director was nervous. The lower levels were not impressive. They were functional and dirty and full of workers who did not know how to behave around important people. But an admiral's request was an admiral's order. Was mopping a corridor in Section D when she heard them coming. Footsteps, many footsteps, official voices. She moved her cart to the side, preparing to become invisible as she always did. Then she saw who was leading the group. Admiral walked in front, listening to the station director explain something about power systems. Behind him came his officers. Behind them came station staff. And behind them, wearing smug expressions, came Sub-Commander and his companions. His heart stopped for one beat, then it started again. She lowered her head and continued mopping. Just a janitor, nothing to see, nobody important. Spotted her. His yellow eyes lit up with cruel joy. Here was his favorite target, right in front of the human delegation. A chance to show human weakness to other humans. He walked toward her, his officers following. The rest of the group slowed, watching with confusion. "You," said loudly, everyone could hear. "Janitor, human, look at me when a superior speaks to you." Did not look up. She continued mopping. Grabbed her arm with one of his 4 hands. His grip was strong, his claws pressing into her skin. "I said look at me." Slowly raised her head. Her dark eyes met his yellow ones. "There," said, smiling. "On your knees. Apologize for contaminating this corridor with your presence. Show the Admiral what human servants are good for." The station director looked horrified. The Admiral's staff looked angry, but no one moved. There were powerful allies. No one wanted to create a diplomatic incident. Pushed down on shoulder, kneel. She did not kneel. She stood completely still, looking at him with those calm, dark eyes. Then a voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Release her now." It was Admiral. He had pushed through the crowd and was standing 5 meters away. His face was white. Not angry white, something else. Shocked white. Turned, still holding his arm. "Admiral, this is a matter. This human works in our section. She must learn proper respect." "I said release her." The Admiral's voice was quiet, but something in it made his hand open. Stepped back, rubbing her arm where his claws had left marks. For a long moment, Admiral stared at her. His eyes moved over her face, her gray hair, the slight limp in her stance. His mouth opened and closed. His staff had never seen him like this. The man who had faced enemy fleets without blinking was trembling. "Colonel Park," he finally said, his voice cracked, we thought you were dead." The corridor went completely silent. Looked from the Admiral to the janitor. "Colonel, this cleaning woman, Admiral, surely you are mistaken." Admiral did not answer him. He was still staring at. Then, slowly, deliberately, he straightened his back. His hand came up to his forehead. He saluted. A full formal military salute, the kind given only to superior officers or heroes. His entire staff followed, 20 officers snapping to attention, saluting a woman in a janitor's uniform. Stood very still. The mop was still in her hand. Water dripped from it onto the floor. "Not dead," she finally said. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the silent corridor. "Just tired, Admiral, just very tired." She looked at the stunned faces around her, at whose scales had gone pale, at who stood frozen against the wall, at the officers still holding their salutes. "Please," she said, "I have floors to clean." She turned back to her work. The mop moved across the metal floor, left, right, left. Admiral slowly lowered his hand. His voice was rough when he spoke. "Colonel, please join us for dinner tonight. There is much to discuss." "I have nothing to discuss, Admiral." "Please, for old times, for the people who served with you, for those who did not come back." The mop stopped moving, did not turn around, but her voice when it came was different, older, heavier. "One dinner, then you let me return to my life." "Agreed." The delegation moved on, tried to ask questions, but the Admiral's aide cut him off with a look of pure ice. "You do not know who she is," the aide said quietly. "You truly do not know who you have been tormenting." "Then tell me," demanded. The aide smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Ask your intelligence officers. Search the Terran War records. Look for Harkin's Gate. And when you find out, Subcommander, I suggest you start praying to whatever gods your people believe in." Within hours, rumors spread through every level of the station. The janitor, the salute, the Admiral's white face, the name that was whispered in corners. Colonel Park, the butcher of Harkin's Gate. In her small room, sat on her bed and stared at the metal case under her bed. 15 years she had kept it closed. 15 years she had been no one, just a janitor, just a ghost. Now the past had found her. She pulled out the case and entered the code. The lock clicked open. Inside was a uniform, Terran military colonel rank. Beneath it was a pistol. Beneath that, a folder of photographs, young faces, soldiers who had followed her into darkness and never come out. She touched the uniform's shoulder patch. The 47th Mining Defense Regiment, all dead now, all except her. "I am sorry," she whispered to the photographs. "I tried to forget, I tried so hard." But some things could not be forgotten. Some things came back, no matter how far you ran. The image kept repeating in his mind. 20 officers saluting a janitor, an admiral's face going white, the words Colonel Park echoing in the corridor. At 3 in the morning, he gave up trying to rest. He went to the security office and found already there, staring at her screen with wide eyes. "You found something," he said. "I found everything." Her voice was strange, hollow. The Admiral's visit triggered a temporary security downgrade on related files. "I can access the records now." She looked up at him. "You need to see this." He sat down beside her. She opened a file. The screen filled with text and images and old video recordings. "The Annexation War," said. 22 years ago, do you know it? Basic history, the try to take human colonies. We stopped them. We almost did not stop them," scrolled through the file. "There were a hive species, insect-like, millions of warriors controlled by their queens. They moved fast and hit hard. In the first 6 months they took 8 colony worlds, 3 million humans dead or captured." She stopped at a photograph. A planet covered in brown and green, mountains and deserts and mining facilities. Harkin's Gate, mining colony on the edge of human space. Population 40,000. Strategic value almost none. Defense garrison 200 soldiers. 200 against 15,000 warriors. His finger tapped the screen. The Hive sent a full assault force to take the colony. It should have been easy. A small colony with almost no military presence. They expected to win in hours. She opened another file. Video footage old and grainy, dark tunnels, flashing lights, the sound of weapons firing. The garrison commander was Colonel Park, 31 years old, first major command. No one expected much from her. Watched the footage. He saw figures moving through darkness, human soldiers in dirty armor, miners carrying industrial tools, and something else, shapes that moved too fast with too many legs. They landed and pushed into the mining tunnels. That was their first mistake. His voice was quiet. Colonel Park knew the tunnels. She had spent 3 months mapping every shaft, every passage, every dead end. She turned the entire colony into a trap. More footage. An explosion collapsing a tunnel entrance. Warriors crushed under falling rock. Human soldiers appearing from side passages, firing, then vanishing before the enemy could respond. She used mining equipment as weapons, drilling machines to collapse enemy positions, cargo loaders as battering rams. She vented atmosphere in captured sections, suffocating warriors by the hundreds. She rigged the lighting system so her people could fight in total darkness while the enemy was blind. Felt cold. This was not the quiet woman who mopped floors. This was someone else entirely. They sent 15,000 warriors. After 3 days, half of them were dead. The Hive Queen sent reinforcements, 5,000 more. Colonel Park killed them too. Opened a document. Official military report, stamped with high-level classification marks. For 11 days she held that colony. 11 days of constant fighting. No sleep, no rest. When one tunnel was lost, she collapsed it and moved to another. When soldiers fell, she armed the miners and civilians. Women, old men, teenagers, anyone who could hold a weapon. How many survived? Asked. 31. Out of 200 soldiers and armed civilians, 31 walked out alive. Paused. The 0 survivors. Not one warrior escaped from those tunnels. Stared at the number, 0. There is more. Opened another file. The Hive Queens communicated through a psychic network. When their warriors died, the queens felt it. Thousands of deaths all at once in those dark tunnels. The experience was so traumatic that 3 queens went mad. The others refused to send more warriors to Harkon's gate. A document appeared on screen. Alien text translated into human language. This is a historical record. They have a name for Colonel Park. In their language, it translates to the nightmare that does not sleep. They still tell stories about her. Parents use her name to frighten their children. Sat back in his chair. His hands were shaking. After Harkon's gate, they sued for peace. The war ended. Humanity survived. Closed the file. Because one woman in a mining colony killed so many of their warriors that the Hive Queens lost their nerve. Why is she cleaning floors? Asked. Why is she not a general, a hero? His face darkened. She opened one more file. After the war, questions were asked. How did so few defeat so many? Some of the methods she used. They were not clean. Prisoners allegedly executed. Chemical agents released in the tunnels. Wounded buried alive when tunnels collapsed. War crimes. Never proven. The evidence was destroyed or lost, but the accusations were enough. Some called her a hero. Others called her a monster. The controversy destroyed her career. She resigned her commission, disappeared, and was declared dead 5 years later when no one could find her. Turned to face. She has been here for 15 years. Hiding, cleaning floors, letting people like bully her. The most dangerous human who ever lived, and she chose to become invisible. Thought about all the times he had seen her. The quiet voice, the tired smile, the way she never fought back. I have survived worse than rude children, she had said. Now he understood. By morning, the story had spread across the entire station. Someone leaked the files. Someone always leaked. In the trading halls, merchants whispered to each other. In the section, officers spoke in hushed voices. In the human quarters, people shared videos and documents on their personal devices. The janitor, the colonel, the butcher. Security footage of pushing over her cart was shared 1,000 times. Comments filled the feeds. He is so dead. She could kill him with a mop handle. Why did she not fight back? Because she is not a monster anymore, unlike some people. Heard the whispers, he read the files, and for the first time in his life he felt real fear. He remembered her eyes when he had grabbed her arm. Calm, steady, not afraid. He had thought it was weakness. Now he understood it was something else entirely. Control, perfect, terrifying control. She could have killed him at any moment. One strike to the throat, one finger in the eye. She knew 100 ways to end a life. He had read the reports of what she did in those tunnels. Bodies found with broken necks, warriors strangled with wire, an entire enemy squad killed with nothing but a mining pick. And he had been pushing over her cleaning cart. His commanding officer called him to a meeting. The conversation was short and brutal. You have shamed the Dominion. You have insulted a war hero of an allied species. You will apologize formally and publicly. You will request transfer off this station. And you will pray that Colonel Park does not decide to hold a grudge. She is just one human, tried to say. His commander stared at him with cold, yellow eyes. She killed 20,000 warriors with 200 soldiers and some mining equipment. She is not just one human. She is the reason they signed a peace treaty. She is the reason your comfortable life is possible, and you pushed over her cleaning cart. Had nothing to say. That evening, sat in the officers' dining room with Admiral. They had cleared the room for privacy. 2 old soldiers sitting across a table, wine glasses in their hands. Why did you hide? The Admiral asked. Because I was tired of being a weapon, looked at the red liquid in her glass. After Harkin's Gate, everyone wanted a piece of me. Politicians wanted to use me for propaganda. Generals wanted me to train killers. The media wanted to make me into a monster or a hero, and I am neither. You saved 40,000 lives. I killed 20,000 beings, some of them while they begged for mercy, some of them while they slept. She drank deeply. I told myself it was necessary. Maybe it was, but necessary and right are not the same thing. So you ran. I walked away. I found a place where no one knew my name. I learned to be no one. It took years to stop dreaming about the tunnels, years to stop seeing faces in the dark. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. "They remember you," he said. "They joined the Galactic Trade Council last year. Part of the treaty required them to share their historical records. Your name came up. Some of their diplomats still refuse to be in the same room as humans." Laughed, it was not a happy sound. Good, let them be afraid. Fear keeps people alive. A young officer knocked on the door and entered quickly. His face was pale. "Admiral, we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "An unidentified fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. 47 ships. They are demanding the station's surrender." Put down her wine glass. Her hand was perfectly steady. "What kind of ships?" "Mixed, raiders and pirates. They call themselves the Scorn Collective, sir. They are threatening to bombard the station if we do not comply." The Admiral stood. "How long until our reinforcements can arrive?" 4 days minimum." 4 days against 47 ships. Looked at her hands, small hands rough from years of cleaning, hands that had killed thousands. "Admiral," she said quietly, "what assets does this station have?" "Limited, 40 security officers, basic defensive weapons." She closed her eyes. She saw tunnels, she saw darkness, she heard screaming. "Show me your maps," she said. "Show me the station layout, all of it." "You do not have to." "Yes, I do." She stood up, and somehow she seemed taller than before. The tired janitor was gone. Something else stood in her place. Something old and cold and very, very dangerous. You wanted to know why I never fought back against. Because once I start fighting, I do not stop until the enemy is dead. All of them. Every single one. She walked toward the door. Get me volunteers. Get me weapons. Get me everything that can be used to hurt someone. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. I did not want to do this again, but those raiders just threatened to kill everyone on the station. Children, families, innocent people. She turned to look at the Admiral. Her eyes were empty pools of darkness. They made a mistake, the same mistake they made. They thought this was going to be easy. She smiled. It was not a nice smile. Nothing is ever easy when I am involved. The Scorn Collective had been raiding ships and stations for 12 years. Their leader, a massive four-armed alien named, was called the Flayer because of what he did to prisoners who could not pay ransom. No one had ever successfully resisted them. No one had ever tried. Sat in his command chair, watching 7 on his, a fat prize, rich merchants, diplomatic treasures, thousands of beings who would make excellent slaves. His fleet surrounded the station like wolves around a wounded animal. His demands were simple. Surrender the cargo, surrender the treasury, surrender 500 workers, or burn. The station director, a nervous man named, wanted to negotiate. He was already calculating what could be sacrificed, which cargo was least valuable, which workers would not be missed. He was the kind of man who survived by giving away pieces of himself, one at a time, until nothing remained. Then Admiral walked into the command center with an old woman in a janitor's uniform, and everything changed. Director, the Admiral said, I am invoking emergency military authority. Tactical command of this station is transferred to Colonel Park. Stared at the woman. She was small and plain with gray hair and rough hands. She looked like someone's grandmother. Admiral, this is madness. We cannot fight 47 ships. We must negotiate. Negotiate what? Spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft but carried through the room. They want cargo, money, and slaves. If you give them what they want, they will come back next year and ask for more. That is how raiders work. They smell weakness and they feed on it. What choice do we have? We fight. With what? Spread his hands. 40 security officers, some emergency weapons, against professional raiders. Walked to the tactical display. The station's layout appeared in glowing lines. Docking bays, corridors, maintenance tunnels, life support systems. She studied it for a long moment. How many civilians can fight? I do not know. This is a trading station, not a military base. Find out, ask for volunteers, anyone who can hold a weapon. She turned to the security chief, a tired-looking woman named Captain Shin. How many weapons do we have? Standard security equipment, maybe enough for 100 people. After that, we would be using maintenance tools. Maintenance tools will work. His finger traced a line on the display. These corridors here and here, they connect to the main docking bays. The raiders will come through these routes. We do not need to beat them in open combat. We need to make every meter of this station cost them blood. Stood in the corner, watching the transformation. The tired janitor was gone. In her place stood a woman who moved with terrible purpose. Her eyes saw the station not as a place to live, but as a machine designed to kill. I need teams, said. Small groups, 3 to 5 people, mobile, they hit and run, they never stay in one place. They know every side passage, every maintenance tunnel, every hiding spot. We have the station security, Captain Shin said. They know the layout. Good, they will lead the teams. Arm the volunteers with whatever we have. Guns if possible, cutting tools if not. A plasma welder can kill just as easily as a rifle. Admiral stepped forward. Colonel, I should mention that Sub-Commander has volunteered to fight, along with 15 of his officers. Paused, her expression did not change. Assign them to Corridor 7. It is a critical. After everything he did to you. This is not about me. This is about keeping people alive. If he can fight, he fights. We need every body. The preparations took 6 hours. 6 hours of chaos and fear and desperate work. Was everywhere, giving orders, adjusting plans, making decisions with terrifying speed. She ordered the lighting systems rewired so sections could be plunged into darkness at will. She ordered atmosphere controls prepared to vent specific corridors. She ordered cargo loaders positioned at key intersections. The raiders expect scared civilians, she told her commanders. They expect easy prey. We will give them a nightmare. When the first enemy shuttles approached the station, 200 defenders waited in the darkness. Most were not soldiers. They were traders and technicians and dock workers. Some were human. Some were species who had never fought alongside each other before. They were all terrified. But when they looked at the small woman in the center of the command hub, tracking enemy movements on a glowing display, they found something that felt like hope. The boarding began at 400 station time. The first wave of raiders, 50 strong, breached docking bay 3. They expected to find cowering civilians. Instead, they found empty corridors and dead silence. Then the lights went out. The screaming started 3 seconds later. From her command position, watched the raiders' signals vanish from the display, one by one. Her voice was calm on the communication channel. Team 4, fall back to secondary position. Team 7, hold your ground. Team 11, prepare to ambush enemies retreating from Bay 3. Was with Team 7, positioned in a maintenance corridor near the civilian shelters. His hands shook around his weapon. Around him, civilians clutched cutting tools and metal pipes. An older male stood beside him. The alien's scales were pale with age, but his eyes were hard. Your colonel, the said quietly. She is planning something, is she not? What do you mean? I have seen warriors before. I have seen killers, but she is different. She sees patterns that others miss. She is 3 steps ahead of the enemy already. In Corridor 7, and his officers waited in darkness. This morning, he had been the bully, the powerful sub-commander who pushed around janitors for fun. Now he waited in the dark with a weapon in his hands, following orders from the woman he had tormented. She had not even looked at him when she assigned his position, had not acknowledged the past, had simply given him a job and expected him to do it. Somehow that was worse than anger. Anger he could have understood. This cold efficiency made him feel like an insect. The raiders came, 20 of them pushing through the corridor in combat formation. They were professionals, well-armed and experienced. Gave the signal. His officers fired from both sides. The raiders fell in a storm of plasma bolts. In 30 seconds it was over. Corridor 7 clear, reported on the communication channel. Good work's voice replied, nothing more. The battle lasted 8 hours. 8 hours of hit-and-run attacks. 8 hours of traps and ambushes and desperate fighting in the dark. The raiders pushed forward, took positions, and died. They secured corridors, and then died when the air was vented into space. They captured intersections, and then died when cargo loaders crashed through barricades at full speed. By hour 6, the Flayer was no longer confident. His raiders reported enemies appearing from nowhere and vanishing like ghosts. His officers died in darkness, killed by opponents they never saw. His forces had taken more casualties than in any previous raid. Who is commanding their defense? He demanded. His intelligence officer checked the intercepted communications. A human female, they called her Colonel Park. The name meant nothing too, but when he searched the galactic databases, his blood ran cold. Harkin's Gate, the war, 20,000 dead in dark tunnels. He was fighting the nightmare that does not sleep. Hour 8. The raiders made one last push toward the civilian shelters. committed his reserves, 300 warriors in a desperate assault. If they could take hostages, they could still win. The corridor to the shelters was wide and well lit, no place for ambushes. The raiders moved fast, confident in their numbers. Was waiting for them. She stood alone in the center of the corridor. In one hand she held a plasma cutter, in the other a fire axe. Her janitor's uniform was stained with blood. The raider captain laughed. "One woman against 300. Step aside, human, we only want the civilians." "I know what you want." His voice was soft. "I know what you will do to them, the women, the children. I have read your files." "Then you know you cannot stop us." "I stopped thee at Harkin's gate. I stopped 15,000 warriors with 200 soldiers and mining equipment." She raised the plasma cutter. The blue flame hissed in the air. "You have 300. I have 30 volunteers with me in these walls, and I have spent 8 hours learning every weakness in your tactics." She smiled. It was a terrible smile. "Come and die." The raiders charged. The corridor erupted into chaos. Was one of the volunteers hidden in the maintenance passages? He watched through a vent as moved through the enemy like a ghost. She was not fast. She was not strong. But she was precise. Every movement had purpose. Every strike hit exactly where it needed to. Around her, hidden doors opened and volunteers attacked. Lights flickered off and on. The raiders could not form ranks, could not coordinate, could not even see who was killing them. In 15 minutes, it was over. Stood in a corridor filled with bodies. Her plasma cutter was broken. Her fire axe was gone, buried in someone's chest. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead. She keyed her communicator. "All defensive positions report." One by one, the teams reported in. 23 defenders dead, 60 wounded, but the civilian shelter was safe. On his flagship, watched the casualty reports scroll across his screen. Over 300 raiders dead, his best fighters gone. He opened a communication channel to the station. "Colonel Park." Her face appeared on his screen, small, tired, covered in blood that was not her own. "You have won this battle, but I have ships. I can bombard this station from orbit. Everyone dies." "You can try." Her voice was utterly calm. "But here is what will happen. The moment you fire on this station, I detonate the fuel reserves in Section 7. Your boarding parties die, all of them. Then the survivors of this station spend our final hours hunting your escape pods, every single one. You would die too." "I have been ready to die for a very long time." She leaned closer to the camera. "I am Park. I am the nightmare that does not sleep. I killed 20,000 warriors in 11 days. Your 300 raiders lasted 8 hours." She smiled. "Run away, little pirate. Run away and never come back. Because if I see your ships again, I will find you. I will hunt you across the galaxy, and I will end you." The communication cut off. Stared at the blank screen. His hands were shaking. "Orders, Commander," his first officer asked. A long silence. "Retreat. All ships fall back to hyperspace." "Sir." "You heard me. We are leaving now." The Scorn Collective fleet turned and ran. On 7, the defenders watched the enemy ships vanish into hyperspace. For a moment, no one moved. Then someone cheered. The sound spread, growing louder until the entire station was celebrating. In the corridor outside the civilian shelters, sat down against a wall. Her hands, covered in blood, were finally shaking. Found her there 10 minutes later. He sat down beside her. "You saved us," he said. "I killed people," she replied. "Again, I promised myself I would never do that again." "They were raiders, slavers. They would have hurt innocent people." "I know." She closed her eyes. "That is what I told myself at Harkin's gate. Every death was necessary. Every kill was justified. But necessary and justified do not make it easier to sleep at night." She looked at her hands. "I was a janitor for 15 years. I cleaned things, I fixed things. No one died because of me, it was peaceful. Tears ran down her face, cutting tracks through the blood and dirt. I miss being peaceful. Did not know what to say. So he just sat there beside her, two humans in a corridor full of the dead, waiting for the shaking to stop. The Terran reinforcements arrived 3 days later. They found a station battered but alive. They found corridors by plasma fire. They found makeshift barricades built from cargo containers and maintenance equipment. They found people who had been strangers 3 days ago now standing together as comrades. And they found stories, so many stories. The news networks arrived soon after. Reporters from a dozen species pushed microphones into faces, demanding details. The janitor of 7. The nightmare returns. The battle of the corridors. Headlines spread across the galaxy. 23 defenders dead. Over 300 raiders killed. One woman directing it all from a maintenance hub, tracking enemy movements through ventilation sensors and building systems. The story became a legend. In the days that followed, awards were given, medals were presented, speeches were made. Admiral personally pinned a Valor Star to Captain Shin's uniform, received a promotion to lieutenant for his actions during the defense. Through all of it, stayed in her room. She had been treated for her injuries in the medical bay. A cut on her forehead, bruised ribs, a twisted ankle, nothing serious. The doctors had wanted to keep her for observation, but she had refused. "I need to sleep," she had said, and she had gone back to her small room in the lower levels and closed the door. 3 days later came to see her. The sub-commander walked through corridors that had once been his territory, where he had pushed over cleaning carts and demanded respect he had not earned. Now workers of every species nodded to him as he passed. He had fought beside them. He had bled with them. He found his door and stopped. His 4 hands opened and closed. For a long moment he could not move. Then he knocked. The door opened. Stood there in civilian clothes, her gray hair loose around her shoulders. She looked older than before, tired. "Sub-Commander, may I come in?" She stepped aside. The room was small, a narrow bed, a simple desk, a picture on the wall of a mountain covered in snow. No medals, no awards, nothing to show what she had done or who she had been. Stood in the center of the room. He was twice her height, with 4 arms and scales that had seen 100 battles. But in that moment he felt very small. "I have come to apologize," he said. "You do not need to apologize. You volunteered to fight. You did your duty." Not for the fight, for before. His voice was rough. For the cart, for the insults, for treating you like dirt beneath my feet. Sat down on her bed. She gestured to the single chair at her desk. Sat, his large frame looking strange in the small room. "I have submitted my resignation," he continued. "I will return to the... My career is over, but that is not punishment enough for what I did." "Punishment?" Tilted her head. "You want me to punish you?" "I deserve it." "What would that accomplish?" Struggled to find words. In culture, honor demanded payment for debts. He had wronged this woman. He needed to make it right. "I do not understand," he finally said. "You could have destroyed me at any moment. One word to the Admiral, one complaint to Station Command. Instead, you said nothing. You let me abuse you day after day. Why?" Was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know what happened to me after Harkin's Gate?" "I read the reports, the controversy, the accusations." "The reports do not tell the whole story." She looked at her hands. "After the battle, I did not feel like a hero. I felt like a monster. I had done terrible things in those tunnels. Things that were necessary, perhaps, but terrible nonetheless." She paused. "I spent 3 years after the war trying to become human again, learning to be something other than a weapon. It was the hardest thing I ever did. Harder than fighting, harder than killing. Just learning to be gentle again, to be kind." She looked up at You pushed over my cart. You called me names. You made me kneel. But that was not worth becoming a monster again. That was not worth breaking all the work I had done to put myself back together. You let me hurt you to protect yourself. I let you hurt my pride to protect my soul. She smiled sadly. Cruelty is easy, Sub-Commander. I know how easy. Anyone can learn to kill, but learning to stop, learning to put down the weapon and walk away, that is the real challenge. Was silent for a long time. I do not know if I can do what you did, he finally said. I do not know if I can become something other than what I am. You already have. Stood and walked to her small window looking out at the stars. 3 days ago, you were a bully who tormented those weaker than yourself. Today, you fought beside humans and defended civilians you had never met. That is change. It is not enough. It is a start. Rose. He looked at the small human woman standing with her back to him, her gray hair silver in the starlight. What happens now? He asked. You go home, you think about who you want to be, you choose. She turned to face him. That is what I did. That is what everyone must do eventually. We are not defined by our worst moments. We are defined by what we do next. Bowed, a deep bow, the kind reserved for elders and teachers in culture. I will remember, he said. I will tell others. Your story deserves to be known. Tell whatever story you want, replied. But remember that the story is not the person. I am not the nightmare that does not sleep. I am not the butcher of Harkin's Gate. I am just a woman who made choices, good and bad, and lived with them. Left. Years later, he would write a book about his encounter with Park. It would become required reading in military academies. A lesson about honor, humility, and the true meaning of strength. 2 days later, Admiral came to see her. He found her in the cafeteria, eating simple food at the same corner table where she always sat. But something was different now. She was not alone. Workers from across the station nodded to her as they passed. Some stopped to say thank you. A young family brought their child to meet her. The offer still stands, the Admiral said, sitting across from her. Full reinstatement, command of a new rapid response unit. We need people like you. People like me. Leaders, strategists, survivors. Shook her head. I told you, Admiral, I stopped. I only picked up the weapon again because children were going to die. Now that it is over, I am putting it back down. The galaxy needs you. The galaxy needs people who can fight. There are plenty of those. She looked at the workers around her, the families, the children playing in the corridors. What the galaxy needs more is people who can stop fighting, who can choose peace even when war is easier. You could train others, pass on what you know. I pass on what I know every day, she smiled. I show people that you can survive terrible things and still be gentle, that you can be dangerous and still choose kindness. That is more important than any battle tactics. The Admiral sighed. He had known she would refuse. He had hoped anyway. What will you do now? What I have done for 15 years. Clean floors, fix things, be no one. After everything, you want to go back to being invisible. I was never invisible, Admiral. I was just quiet. She finished her food and stood. There is a difference. Months passed. Life on 7 returned to normal. New workers arrived. New ships docked. The battle became history, then legend, then background noise. One morning, a young technician arrived on the station. He was part of a cultural exchange program, one of the first of his species to work alongside humans since the war. His name was hard for humans to pronounce, so his colleagues just called him K. K was nervous. He had grown up on stories of human brutality, the nightmare that does not sleep, the dark tunnels of Harkin's Gate where his ancestors had died by the thousands. He expected to face hatred and fear. Instead, he found a busy station full of beings who did not care about ancient history. Humans and dozens of other species worked side by side. No one looked at him with special hatred. On his third day, he accidentally bumped into an older human woman in a corridor. She was pushing a cleaning cart, her gray hair tied back in a simple knot. "Sorry," Kay said quickly, his translator converting the words to human speech. "I did not see you." The woman smiled at him, a kind smile, a grandmother's smile. "No harm done. Welcome to 7." She continued on her way. Kay thought nothing of it. Later in the break room, he mentioned the encounter to a colleague. A human worker looked at him strangely. Gray hair, cleaning cart, walks with a small limp. Yes, a janitor. The break room went quiet. Workers exchanged glances. Someone laughed nervously. "Kay," the human said carefully, "you know about the war, yes? The Battle of Harkin's Gate." "Of course, the nightmare that does not sleep. Our queens still fear that name." "That janitor you bumped into, that is her." Kay's legs went weak. He sat down heavily. That is not possible. She would be famous. She would be a general." "She chose not to be. She chose this." The human gestured around the break room. "She just wanted peace. 15 years of cleaning floors and fixing things and being nobody special." Kay thought about the kind smile, the soft voice, the gray hair and rough hands. This was the monster from his people's nightmares, this gentle old woman. The next morning, he brought her tea. He found her mopping a corridor in the lower levels, just like any other day. "Excuse me," he said, his voice trembled. I learned who you are, what you did." Stopped mopping. She looked at him with those dark, calm eyes. "I brought tea," Kay continued, "as an apology for my people, for what we did, for the war." A long silence. "The war was not your fault," said gently. "You were not even born." "But my ancestors." "Your ancestors made choices, bad choices. Many beings died because of them, including many of my friends." She paused. "But holding you responsible for what your ancestors did would be like holding me responsible forever for what I did at Harkin's Gate. At some point, we have to let the past go." She took the tea from his hands. "Thank you, this is kind. May I bring you tea again tomorrow?" "If you want." Kay brought her tea every morning after that. They talked about his home, about her mountains in Korea that she had not seen in decades, about the stars and the strange paths that brought different beings together. 1 year later, Kay was still on the station. He had stopped being afraid of humans. He had stopped thinking about ancient wars. He had found something unexpected in this place, a home. And every morning, he sat with an old human woman in a corridor, drinking tea and watching the stars through the windows. In her small room kept a picture on her wall, a mountain covered in snow. Korea. Home. She would never go back. She knew that now. Her home was here in these corridors among beings of a dozen species who had become her family. On her desk was a new photograph. The defenders of 7 taken after the battle, humans and others all standing together. Some were smiling, some were crying, all were alive. She looked at it sometimes, late at night when sleep would not come. Not with pride, not with satisfaction, just with a quiet gratitude. She had been a weapon once, a nightmare, a monster in the dark. Now she was something else, something better. She was at peace. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and bright. Ships came and went. The galaxy continued its endless dance. And in a small room on a trading station at the edge of known space, an old woman looked at her hands and felt them finally stop shaking. She was home,